thank you so much, Oyeyinka Olaniran, for joining us on TCA, the conversation with Afolakemi. And I'm so glad that you're here today. And I've been just saying a lot about you before you actually joined the show. And I just want to say thank you. And right away, we just get on it. And honestly, I know so many people are listening to us right now and they want to know who you are. You know, they've seen the fly. I'm like, okay, who is this guy? And my question to you will be like, it's best they hear from the horse's mouth. Like, just say, describe yourself and tell them exactly what you do and who you are. So who is Oyeyinka Olaniran?
Thank you for having me, Afolakemi. It's always a pleasure joining at Sound Life Radio. My name is Oyeyinka Olaniran. First, I like to describe myself as a Christian, a born-again Christian. I like to, set that clear from the onset. In terms of what I do, I am a social worker by profession, and I've been in this trade for over a decade, working in child protection and in one of the outstanding borough in London. I'm a father to two children. I'm married to a lovely wife. I'm a songwriter. I just added to some of the things that I do as an author. I love helping people. I love devoting time into missions work in East Africa, to be precise, in Uganda. I love meeting people. I love traveling. I love creative writing. So, in a nutshell, this is me. One of my passion as well is, again, something new, empowering and supporting male victims of domestic abuse is something I've been researching on in the last 3, 4 years. I also work with fathers who are, like I said, victims of domestic abuse. So this is another thing that I do just to empower them, support them. It's an area that quite stereotypical in terms of the embarrassment, the shame that is associated with it. So I really want to let men break free, especially men going through this sort of abuse. So in a nutshell, that is Oyinka.
Okay, just by you introducing yourself, I've got 2 questions already, but I
Oh,
would
go
just
on.
take a hold on that. I would say that thank you so much for filling that gap of actually being there to empower men. And I think that's a gap that has always been there. I was still saying to a friend yesterday that I want to, like, when I hear empowerment, I want to hear somebody say empowerment and men, empowering men, because most times over the years, decades, thousands of years ago, it's all about empowering women, something about women, something about ladies, girls, and everything. Even in churches, there's so much focus on women, and that's good. But I think that the spotlight should be on men as well. And I thank you so much for doing that. And I think that's something that is very, very needful. Yeah.
My pleasure. I mean, there is this thing about men. I read a book and the author highlighted on what they call misconstrued masculinity in terms of, you would have heard about the phrase, men don't cry and stuff like that. Men do actually cry,
Yeah.
men should show their emotions, men should show their weaknesses, their vulnerability. And you're quite right to say that we have read, we have seen shows, we've seen events about women empowerment. But I think it's high time because there has to be a balance. It takes two to make a home for those who are married. So there has to be a balance in terms of whilst we're empowering women, which is good. I support that. It's fantastic. But it's high time as well we, start talking about how to empower men and support them as well. And especially with, some kind of topic that seems like a taboo that men may not necessarily want to talk about. Even in churches, people are ashamed to talk about, actually, this is what I'm going through as a man in the community, in our current society. So I'm a champion, and I'm looking forward to engaging a lot of people on the topic around empowering men.
Yeah, that would be a very good one. And I'm also thinking, you're a social worker. just being a social worker alone, I know is a lot of work. And then you're a gospel artist, and then you write. And I know writing actually takes time.
It
You
does.
have to take time to meditate. You have to be introverted in quote, like, and also, and so that also requires time. And then you're a father, I'm sure you're a husband, all these roles, and they require time. And I'm thinking, how have you been able to do it?
Good one. I think it's about being intentional.
Okay.
Um, if we talk about the book, that manuscript sat for more than 3 years. And then I woke up last year to say, hang on a minute, I've got over 30,000 words. This book is going to bless life. And one of the key things for me last year was like, I must do something about that. So it's about being intentional. This is one of the questions that a lot of people have actually asked me, knowing the nature of the kind of work that I do, and all other commitments, around me as well. So it's about being intentional. It's about saying to myself, this coming Saturday, I'm going to spare 2 hours to commit into this. And also, someone told me, and I wouldn't forget this. I attended, was it a seminar or workshop many years ago? And that person was talking about the concept of 5 to 9. So we've heard about 9 to 5. 9 to 5
Mm-hmm.
we go to, but the question was at the time, what do you then do from 5 to 9
Tonight.
in the morning? So, and I thought, let me steal a moment. When I come back from work, I still have about a couple of hours before going to bed. How about, putting that, mapping that out, like, what is it I can do? What is it I can be intentional about to achieving during that kind of period? And that is it really. It's about discipline as well. You know, we all would have that time. There will never be enough time, and that is the
Honestly.
reality. There
Mm-hmm.
will never be enough time. But it's about being intentional about this is what I want to do. I've got this plan set up. How can I work towards it? How can I create time? So that's how it's worked for me, but discipline, I would say, is one of the hallmark.
Okay, let's talk about your book. The
Yeah,
color of, because you mentioned it, I'm like, okay, let's just talk about it. The color of my problems. And honestly, when I saw that, and I'm like, okay, I need to read it. I love the title anyway, because it's catchy. It's something like,
yeah,
okay, what's the problem? And and coming from a man again, it's like, okay, like, just to what we were talking about earlier, a man saying the color of my problems, I'm like, okay, what's the problem? I'm interested, I want to know. And I'm
mm,
thinking, and when I watched the, well, I call it a trailer about the book on your Instagram page, and it was talking about what the book entails,
yeah,
and it's talking about perfection, it's talking about perseverance, talking about
yeah,
fear. And I'm
yeah.
thinking, okay, I'm going to ask you to tell me exactly what inspired you to write this book.
So this was actually a question I asked myself many years ago, and that was during one of my darkest moments. Um, you know, I was just thinking, I was deep in my thoughts, and that question just came into mind. What is the color of your problem?
Mm.
And my initial response was actually to laugh. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. I was going through very rough times, and that thought just came. Yinka, what is the color of your problem? And that was how it started many years ago. And I began to think about it. And just like you rightly said in that thriller, this book is actually addressing 3 P's: our perception, our perspective, and how that would help us to persevere, in terms of life. So ideally, the book is not about color. The book is actually helping us to, I use color in a metaphorical sense to drive home. How do you see problems? And
Mm.
that is the catch there. How do you see problems? What perception would you give to anything that you're going through at all? So it's about decoding problems really, and it's helping us to correct our perception about our problem and to enlighten our perspectives about problems as well. I'll give you one of the things I wrote there. I said, Many see problems, few see projects. So
Mm,
I want to see what I'm going through. I'm not negating the reality. I'm not undermining the reality, but I want to color it in a way that it would enable me to get to the other side, you know. So the color of my problem, again, one thing about problem is that we cannot do about it, you know. So one of the things I said in the book is that nobody likes them. Everyone has them. What do we
mhm,
do about them? So no one living can say that they don't have problems because problems are irrefutable. You know, they are dynamic. But the difference is how we perceive them, the perspective that we put into them, and this will help us to persevere. So the book is actually addressing a lot of things. So I started with my own story in chapter 1, where I wrote about the inevitable uninvited guest.
mm,
And what I did there is actually use problem. The problem is actually the guest because none of our problems will give us notice. And I recall an incident that happened to me 2 months after I got married. I, fractured, my right arm. And it was a beautiful day. Everything was okay. My wife just saw me off to the train station. And before I knew it, I fell. And it was so sudden, you know. I would never have thought that that would happen to me that morning. And that is the thing about problem. They do not give us notice. So another thing I addressed there is, why do bad things happen to good people? And who defines who a good person is? you know,
That's a
people would say,
question.
absolutely. People will
So
say,
many
God
people are
forbid.
probably trying to solve.
Yeah, people will say, God forbid, not my portion. My question is, whose portion? You know? So being a good person does not mean that you wouldn't go through challenges because
Mhm.
problems, trials, challenges are what would happen to anyone on earth.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. And I was just enjoying that, and I just felt okay. He's just gonna keep talking. And I like the way you said where you talked about everybody has problems,
Yeah,
and problems do not give us notice. It's not going to.
yeah,
So there is an uncertainty that is actually attached to a problem. You don't know if it's going
absolutely.
to happen or not. And I think you talked about something about fear.
Yeah,
Yeah, and in your trailer, you said something about fear. And I'm thinking that another thing about the thought of a problem is it brings fear.
sure.
And I think that those are the things that will be going through the minds of people. I say that book is a good one to read for people. And I was going to ask you, did you talk about like, um, was it personal for you, this book?
It is very personal for me because one of the things, like I said, in my own very, darkest moment, my problems were speaking to me at the time, and they still do. And one of the illustrations I use is, in any Western world or any part of the world that people live, for those who drive, you hit the traffic light, right?
Mm,
And those traffic lights, they don't verbally communicate to us. But when you see green, you know that you're set to go.
mhm,
When you see another color, you know that you're about to go. When you see red, you know it's telling you to stop. So I use that analogy in the sense that when problem hits, they communicate to you. Some problem will hit you, they sense in fear. For
mm,
example, someone has gone to see their general practitioner, their doctor, and they've given them a very terrible medical account of what it is that they might be going through health-wise. Immediately, that report is speaking to them.
mm,
That report is sending fear.
yeah.
That report is saying, yes, you're now going to die. That report is saying, yes, this is the end of your life. But this is the thing about the book. Now, when those words, those thoughts are coming through our minds, how do we process those words? Okay. So it's about, yes, this is what the report is saying. What is the next step for me?
Mhm.
So that is it for me. So it's quite personal in terms of our problems do speak to us. And again, like I said earlier, I use color in a metaphorical sense.
Mhm.
I think the second chapter of the book says problems speak with colors.
Mhm.
You know, it depends on what you see. Your interpretation of it also matters. And I used a poem from a very good friend. Um, she wrote a poem called The Problem Isn't Always the Problem. And she said, our interpretation often defines the problem. If you
Mhm.
see it as a problem, if you see it as a life sentence, you become imprisoned by it. So
Mhm.
it's all about perception. Now, going back to my example, you've got a medical report saying, oh, someone has got cancer. Clearly, it's a terrible disease that
Mhm.
kills.
Yeah,
But we also know that some people have survived cancer.
sure.
Okay. So if you see it as a life sentence, you become imprisoned by it. And she said, if you see it as a death sentence, you stop living because of it.
A bit.
If you see it as a test and order, you become energized by it. And that's the reason why I said, so many see problems, I see projects. So
Mm.
it might be an opportunity to like, okay, I actually want to look into what is it about this problem?
Mm.
How can I overcome? And the moment people will start to change their perception, you see that things will start to change. I'm
Change.
not saying it's going to be a ride in the park. No, it's going to take a while, but start with your perception, start with your mind.
Oh, thank you so much. Honestly, if you're listening to us right now, I know that there's so much to unravel in this book and get this book. How can someone get the book if they want it?
So the release date would be on the 15th of January, which is
Okay,
next Sunday.
sweet. Yeah.
Um, it should be on Amazon,
Okay.
both the Kindle and
That's
the hard copy would both be on Amazon. There will be other platform as well, but the details will be coming out where people can order.
Okay, so if you're listening to us and you want to read this book, The Color of My Problems is something there's so much to unravel. I'm sure, like you just got like just the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much to it. So definitely get this book. It's going to be out next week, 15th of January.
Yes.
Now I'm going to be going to another part of you, another aspect of you, and it looks like, oh my God, like when you're doing this other thing, I see somebody different. And then when I'm reading the book, I'm looking at all your posters and flyers, like, okay, this is it. Another person, this is a professional person. I'm about to ask this question. How do you switch, or it's just you, or is something just sends a signal to be okay, now I'm about to sing, now I'm about to write? How do you go about, you know?
Um, I think for me, it comes natural. And
Okay.
again, it's about the mindset. If I'm in the singing space, I know I'm in the singing space. And also with my creative writing, everything flow,
Mm-hmm.
with each other, because with songs as well, it comes with your choice of lyrics and stuff like that. So I was listening to someone, a motivational speaker, and this person said, wherever you are, be there.
Mm,
And that is one of the key things for me. If I'm singing, I know I'm singing.
singing.
If I'm within my workspace as a professional social worker, I know I'm doing that. At that moment, I want to be there. I want to give the best. So, and then there are times as well that, within one day, I'm within all this role at the same time. You know, maybe I want to motivate myself. I think was it 2 days ago, I actually listened to one of my singles. You know, I just thought it's been a while. Let me listen to that. At the same time, I was thinking about the book as well. So it flows naturally for me, while sometimes I want to stick to like, okay, this space, I'm a creative writer. This space, I'm a professional social worker. This
Mm,
space, I'm on the mission field. I'm going out there. to help people. And that's how, I've been able to function within this many aspects of my life.
And so what inspired you to sing in your presence? Did you write it?
I
In your
did.
presence, yeah.
I
So what
did.
inspired you? It's a very good one. I know it's worship, and
Yeah.
yeah. So what inspired you, or
In
how did
in
you get
in
that inspiration? Were
in
you
your
just
presence actually happened when I was in the kitchen.
wow, wet place? Were
I
you
was actually
eating,
no,
or your wife was cooking something really
I
nice, and
was
like,
actually
oh my
making
god.
breakfast for my daughter, and that sound just came. In your presence, burdens are lifted. In your
Mm,
presence, chains are broken. And I was like, wow. So one of the things I do as well is always have my phone by my side, because when inspiration comes, you don't want to lose the tune or the sound. So I quickly recorded that chorus, and then I started building on that. I was actually going to do an old song in the studio, but when this came, I was like, wow, maybe let's switch it over and then work on this one. So in your presence is all about, being in God's presence. There's everything in his presence, really. In his presence, you have joy. In his presence, there's mercy.
mhm,
In his presence, there's anointing. So that song is just to lift up everyone's spirit. And in particular, that song came out during the pandemic,
mm,
you know, came out during the pandemic, and I was like, this is just to lift people up. The only place we could be at that time was in God's presence.
yeah.
And that was the big message, because everything was just moving fast. People were dying in their thousands, so many questions, no answers to them at all. So that song
Wow.
was to encourage us at the time. And even now, to say that, look, the best place you could be at any time
Mm,
is to be in God's presence. And
presence.
if you're there, you're safe, you're secure. Even if you catch COVID at the time, my message to people, the presence of God is able to melt that away,
Mhm.
and you made all. So,
Yeah.
like I said, the Lord says, in God's presence, burdens are lifted,
Okay.
chains are broken, and stuff like that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Honestly, I'm
A
inspired,
pleasure.
I'm encouraged. As in you've done so many things today, and I'm sure so everyone listening to us are having that same fire burning. So before you joined the show, we were talking about New Year resolutions and everything. So there's somebody out there listening right now and is thinking, I don't intend to have any resolution this year.
Mm,
I don't intend to do anything just because I don't. And there's also this thing going on about people don't keep to their resolutions and everything.
sure.
What word do you have for someone out there thinking, I'm not doing resolutions. I'm just gonna do me this year.
I would say it's okay, to be honest. Gone are the days that I used to like, oh, this is my New Year resolution. And just like you rightly said, at the end of the year, or maybe a month or two later, we're not even doing anything about it at all.
Nothing.
But one word I would say is, in whatsoever we've set our heart to do, let us be intentional about it. One of
Mm,
the things that have actually worked for me is not in the too many lists that we're going to write down. If it's one thing, like I said to myself last year, if there's anything I would like to achieve, I would like to publish that book. And that was it.
which is
So all my mind, my focus was on it, and seeing that happen just gave me the joy, coming to the end of last year, coming into the start of this year.
yeah.
So for those who may not be like so many people who have got like 10 resolutions or goals, because this is the time of the year where people are talking about goals, setting of goals. What have you got? We need to realize that discussion like that might be overwhelming for some people,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and not to discourage some people, or not to make them feel little in themselves, is to encourage them to like. So my word will be, if anyone is listening out there thinking, I don't even want to do anything, maybe because of their experience of the past years, is think about one thing that you want to do. What would success look like? I say it that way.
Yeah.
If I'm coming to the end of 2023, what would success look like for me? by December 2023? What would success look like for me? Let's not even go to December. Let's take it on a monthly basis because that might feel overwhelming as well. By
Mm-hmm.
the end of January, what would success look like for me? And you will see that each month you would have achieved a lot. But even if it's that one thing, every step, every day, every hour, every month, by the end of December, I'm sure you will get there.
Thank you so much. So if you're listening, don't worry. I'm not going to beat you up on that. I'm not even beating myself up on that. Like, yes, I'm just going to take your word and run with it. Like, even if it's just one thing, honestly, just put your mind, put your heart to it
Yeah.
and achieve it. Now to the fun part. Who is your favorite Bible character and why?
Mm,
Don't mention
el-
Jesus. Jesus is not on the list.
my middle name is Moses. I would go for Moses.
Okay, and why? Don't say because your middle name is Moses. There should be more depth to that.
I'm going for Moses because, again, looking at what Moses went through, leading the children of Israel,
Mm,
and I actually used one of the part of the one aspect of the book actually illustrated on when Moses sent out the 12 spies to spy a land that God had already said to them he had given them. And 10 came back and gave a very negative report, and only two, Joshua and Caleb, gave a positive report. So I said that in the book where I wrote on the grasshopper mentality. Now, 10 spies, 12 spies saw the same thing, that would be terrifying for them. Two actually saw things differently. They saw the same thing. And Moses as a character in the Bible is interesting because he faced a lot himself,
mm,
from people who were very ungrateful to when, they made him really angry and annoyed, and to him, yelling at them, interceding. But one key aspect of, him as a person that we cannot take away is I see Moses as an intercessor. So many times that God said he was going to destroy the children of Israel. And his level of humility is second to none. And even when God said, Moses, let me destroy them, let me start with you. I thought that is something that anyone would want to jump for. you
mm,
know, let me start with you, let me give you a name. But Moses actually cautioned God. The Bible said that God repented.
sure.
He was saying to God that, look, if you're going to do that, all these people would say, you brought them to the wilderness to actually kill them.
Well done.
And God listened to him. So Moses was a selfless man. He wasn't thinking about himself. So, and that's kind of, that shone through for me in terms of his person. Someone who wasn't thinking about himself, someone who was willing to intercede. So many times the children of Israel heard, but he was always interceding for them. He was always pleading. So that would make him stand out for me as one of the Bible characters.
Oh, thank you so much. And it felt like you just preached to me now because I'm seeing Moses in another perspective. I'm like, oh yeah, Moses.
Yeah.
Because Moses, okay, Moses, he was, they found him in water. I know he was like humility and all that, but yeah, now I'm thinking, oh yeah, Moses is selfless.
Mhm.
Now Moses is this. Okay, I'm not going to start thinking about Moses, but it's good. And thank you so much. And
Pleasure.
so people who want to reach out to you, especially when it comes to empowerment, getting your book, reaching out to you for advice, how can we get to you? Are they on social media, email, if you want to just tell us how we can reach out?
So on social media, I can be reached on I am Olaniran. Just
Okay,
I am Jolaniro, if I put it
okay,
that way.
okay,
That's both on Twitter and Instagram. On
okay.
Facebook, I can be connected to by Yinka Olaniran.
Okay,
In terms of empowerment, there's an email account, thrivenetwork22 at gmail.com.
okay. Tribe
There will be
Network 22
22
at
at
gmail.com.
gmail.com.
Okay. So if you're a young person, a young man, if you're a teenager, if you are a man, anyway, and you've got a lot of questions to ask, honestly, just send an email to tribenetwork22 at gmail.com. And you can also reach out to Oyeyinka Olaniran on Twitter and Instagram by searching for I am Y, and Olaniran is spelled Olaniran. And on Facebook is just Oyeyinka Olaniran. And it's just the last 5 letters of his first name, which you will find on the flyer, and his last name, Olaniran. Yeah, if you're struggling to spell that. Thank you so much, Oyeyinka Olaniran. I am blessed to have you today. And we are blessed to have
Always
you
my
today.
pleasure.
We are blessed
Always
to have
my
you
pleasure.
today. And
Thank you for
we are going
having
to
me.
listen. Yes, thank you so much. And right now we're going to listen to one of Oyeyinka Olaniran's single, and it says, "In Your Presence." Definitely in God's presence, there is fullness of joy. And bye for now. And I will be back right now. Don't worry. Stay tuned.